I will welcome Harri Juntunen, who is making the next presentation, and Harri is also hosting the event today. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mikko, for the introduction. So I'm going to talk about a bit of the mythological roots. So I'm going to start with the story. So two goldfish are swimming along in the pond. They are very fresh, young, kind of full of energy in life. And then an older, very old-looking goldfish comes against them and says that, "Hey guys, how's the water today?" And the young fish, they look at each other and swim along and ask that, "What the hell is water?" So this is a story by David Foster Wallace, is one of my favorite authors, and truly captures my feelings about that, what the hell is water, like 5 years ago or something like that. I totally lost my life's direction and was clueless what to do. I was thinking about climate change, how it will be for my kids, who will be in 2050 about my age, and so forth. So I really was clueless and was thinking about that, what is this water, what we are having here, and what kind of a world we are living in. So out of accident, I just stumbled into the agriculture. I simply didn't have any kind of memories even about the agriculture, since my grandparents were the last ones in our family that were actually cultivating land and having animals. So I really had a kind of a rusty and nostalgic feeling about agriculture, but then I decided that, hey, agriculture seems like that might be a direction for me, and so I started looking into that what is there to learn. My father here drinking coffee, he had a horse, and it was used until the 70s in my grandparents' house. And my grandparents, they had a very rough life. They lived in the poorest part of the Finland, Nälkämaa, which is the hunger land of Finland. Really, they were suffering famines. They had 8 children, only 3 of them survived. So really tough conditions. And the last big hunger was actually 1905, when my grandfather was 5 years old. So really tough conditions. So I decided that, hey, I'm living in the abundance. I get food from the store, and still my family has this kind of a history that it's not self-evident that we have good quality food on the table and so forth. So I went further back into the history. So I went to the Big Bang even almost. So that this is the time scale that what we have, that Earth, or as a planet, formed somewhere here by the cosmic powers, and somewhere here the first kind of life signs appear. And if you zoom out somewhere in your tip of your middle finger, there you can see the tiny part of that is us humans, like 100,000 years ago, odd species emerged on the planet. So this is a very long scale, and as we can see, the nature can do without us quite well. It has been there almost like 2 billion years on life on the planet. So, but agriculture, even though if we now zoom into the 100 years, so agriculture is roughly, let's say, 15,000 years old thing, but it's still so old that it shows in your genes. I personally am a mutant, so I can drink milk without any unpleasant side effects. Unfortunately, my son doesn't think that is not a kind of impressive mutation. He would rather have me arms stretched or do some miracle stuff. But yeah, 30% of the world population are basically mutants. So it's very old stuff that people invented cheese and yogurt a while ago, and that then tolerated us for the drinking milk and so forth. Otherwise, it's toxic. So what we are talking about, I went a bit further in time, and ager is an open field, and kulttuura is human actions on that field. So what we are talking about in agriculture, it's truly a cultural thing, a human thing that we do within the nature. And the first, actually, in Western philosophy, the first guy who ever wrote on farm management manual is Hesiodus, and he wrote a book called Ergakai Hemerai, which means works and days. And that is really remarkable book, and in that sense that it only had 800 verses, but there he has two parts. First is the theoretical one, where he collects the myths and the stories at his time. And the first one is quite famous. It's the kind of the golden age of human beings, everybody living in peace and harmony, lovingly taking care of each other. And there are no wars, no diseases, food and drink, there's abundant of them, and everything is peaceful until we then gradually degenerate ourselves to Silver Age, and then comes the Iron Age, and then Demigod Age, a bit better there, but then we stumble into the Iron Age where we are living today. So the idea that there was this kind of golden age, that yesterday was better than tomorrow and so forth. That is the first mythology what he presents there. The other thing is very famous, Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus. So these guys were the titans at that time, and they were responsible of giving positive and useful features to all animals, like birds and wings and horse with fast legs and so forth. But Epimetheus, which is literally means think after, he didn't think that much, and then he distributed all the good features before the humans came in, and then he just said that Prometheus, we don't have any features to distribute for the humans. And then they looked at the humans, and they decided that no way, these guys are naked and they will totally die. They are kind of slow and they don't have any strength and so forth, but they will die immediately if we throw them into the world. So Prometheus makes the stunt, very famous stunt, and he steals fire and art from the gods, so technology and other capabilities that they decided that these would be sufficient for humans to survive in the wilderness. So, but obviously the gods, and especially Zeus, got very, very angry about this stealing of technology and art, and then they chained Prometheus, which is thinking forward, to the rock, and each evening an eagle, which is Zeus himself, comes and eats his liver painfully, and that is especially very cruel punishment, since the Greek believed that all the human feelings and intellect, they are living in the liver. So basically Zeus is eating all the feelings and whatever there is. Later on Prometheus is rescued by Heracleitos, but that is another story. And then one more thing in this very short book is probably the most famous myth what we have is the Pandora. It's not the box, but it is kind of, I don't know what the English is, but you had the crater of wines and so forth. And obviously I won't, so this was a part of the revenge of the gods for the Prometheus from stealing, and they devise the most beautiful woman in the world, and then famously his brother Epimetheus was curious enough and then opened the jar, and everything burst out, diseases, death, war, all these kind of horrible things, except hope that remained in the jar, because Epimetheus was fast enough to close it. So these are the three myths that Hesiodus actually provides us. And my point here is that why do we want to take this, that this golden age nostalgia, technology as a punishment, and curiosity as a curse, these are the things that still prevail in these discussions what we are having, especially on the food. GMO, organic is kind of a feeling that in the golden age everything was kind of organic and natural or something like that. And then we are also, people are kind of, especially in science, that people tend to think that we are doing things that belong only to gods or something like that, and so forth. So these kind of mythologies in different form, in modern format, they tend to figure in the modern day discussions, and that makes it really difficult because it polarizes the discussions, beliefs, uninformed opinions, ignorance even, and so forth. They truly influence us today instead of science, technology, and educated critical thinking. The other part of the book is the practical part, which is truly that telling that when to sow, when to harvest, what to do in the farm, how to treat animals, so that you would be prosperous and you would get enough yield and harvest to support your family and so forth. The book is related to this. The Greek concepts are notoriously difficult to translate, but this stenochoria roughly means a sense of tightness or feeling of tightness, but it also conveys the meaning of sadness and even death. And what is that then? Is that the situation back then when Hesiod was writing was that Greek were really running out of land. They had some metropolis, mother cities in the Peloponnesus, but they needed to migrate. Really too much population, maybe drought, something like that, and then the yields and harvest was not enough. So the obvious solution for the Greeks was that they migrated. They migrated from the metropolis to some other Mediterranean coastlines and solved that stenochoria like migrating, which is really kind of a modern situation if we think about Africa, Syria, Yemen, these kind of places. So people are migrating from bad conditions to better conditions in search for good life and food on the table. The other solution at that time was also political. Solon is the famous lawgiver of Athens. At Solon's time there was a very unjust situation, so that the few elite people basically owned everything and the others were kind of slaves almost to them. That the thing was that people needed to actually sell or make kind of secure their children or wives and themselves, so if they wanted to have seeds and such kind of things. And once you had a bad harvest and you couldn't pay back the seeds and so forth, everybody was sold to slavery and misery for the rest of their lives. So really tough conditions, unfair conditions, and it took a while, but obviously these kind of conditions can't continue quite long, so that you have elite that is kind of slaving all of the rest. So the Solon was the first one to actually make some reforms, which we now know that were the kind of the seed of democracy in Athens at that time. So he made an economic reforms, some political reforms, and also formed a assembly where people would decide what to do together. And that was the kind of the roots of Athens democracy. Obviously, the Greek democracy is totally different what we now know in our modern world. But still, my point here is that political and institutional changes are almost a must in our current situation as well. The biggest reasons we still have, even though that we have nice technology and good science, and we really know what we would need to do, is that we still have the situation where wars, social injustice, poverty, they are still the biggest reasons why our food system fails. We have enough calories, we have enough nutritious food on the planet at the moment to feed everybody, but it's distributed unevenly, and we also waste the food in our fridge, and especially in the Western countries, and so forth. So my point here is that I just want to make, for the roots and the mythologies and so forth, they are still here with us. The same problems what we had like 3,000 years ago are still here. Basically, we wouldn't need to invent anything new. The science is there, technology is there, but it's us only humans that are preventing ourselves to actually solving these problems. And these are very tough problems. The institutional and political problems, they are the most difficult ones, even moral ones. So please remember that we are not saving the nature, but we are saving ourselves from us. So by still being ignorant, prejudices or anything like that, uneducated opinions, sheer hatred or I don't know, ideologies and that kind of things, what still prevail in our everyday discussions, especially in social media, it seems to be the case, except obviously the SEM group, which is very high quality social media discussion forum. So we are trying to save us from ourselves, and there we will need science, like Mikko mentioned earlier. We will need technology, we will need critical thinking, political solutions, institutional changes. So, but I like strong opinions but weakly held, so that if things change, we must be able to change the way we are thinking, the way we are acting, according to the evidence, facts, and not the myths of the Greeks. Thank you. I managed to do this in time, so any questions or notions?
Are there any myths which have technology as a beneficial part of human culture?
I'm not aware of that beneficial myths, but there might be some. But the most famous ones that are more kind of, to me at least, I'm not that knowledgeable of those ones.
You can see it in Christian mythology too, though, with the idea of the Garden of Eden being the sort of the mythological.
Yeah, the golden age, and then the snake tells you something, and you eat an apple, and then paradise is lost, and so forth. So and there we are naked in the wilderness, and diseases and everything like that. So but anyways, this golden age is very powerful myth that even in the currently now the right-wing populism tends to kind of strongly propose these kind of ideas that there was this mythological, I don't know, 20s or 50s when everything is fine and everything was booming, and it's very powerful in that sense. But yeah, good point. We really need to let's find out. I hope that there are positive mythologies as well.
And just as a comment, I thought that I personally heard this Prometheus myth as a positive thing.
Yeah.
Humans got something. It wasn't such a great thing for Prometheus, but it's a good thing for us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm all for Prometheus, and that's also says that there is a Prometheus society in Finland. Not for the Christians, but Prometheus camps there are, and people try to educate not about the God, but about the science and arts. So I didn't know that he had this brother, this Epimetheus, which is whoops, what I did kind of a thing. But it's also a very nice story.
I was a bit curious. You showed a map of the ancient Mediterranean areas. What were the red and the yellow? I couldn't quite make them out. What were they designating the?
These are some other guys as well, so that the red ones are Greeks, and these are some, I just can't remember anymore that. But so the different kind of people, different nations, or whatever they had, tribes at that point. But
in your reading, did you find out? I mean, I've heard a lot about the ancient European cultures deforesting Europe and so on. Did you read about what were the effects of agriculture of that time on the soil, for instance? Did they farm for a while and then had to leave their lands because they? Yeah,
so some of that, but also it was also kind of quite sustainable in that sense that because we didn't have any or humans didn't have any fertilizers and that kind of artificial stuff. But still, obviously, wood cutting, biodiversity loss, drought, erosion, all these things emerged already then. But the population growth and bad conditions, this xenochoria, like too much people in the same space, is the feeling, and it's surprisingly modern situation what we have, even in Mediterranean and especially there.
There was a slide that said something about war, poverty, and social injustice. Yeah, the biggest reason. What's your view on capitalism as one of the main reasons for, the breakdown in the food system? Yeah, that's the economic system. I consider that social injustice is the capitalistic evil plot. I don't want to go there at this point, but yeah, definitely the economic system and how things are at the moment is a big part of a problem, but can also be a big part of a solution. But definitely so that like Solon had these elites, so that 1% is now earning more than half of the population, and surprisingly modern situation already back then in Solon's time. It's also like in companies, like food companies, are driven to sort of produce, cheaper, faster, quicker, and that of course has a massive impact on the environment and the quality of the food. Yeah, that's true also the industrial agriculture and food production, but also organic and that kind of alternatives, they do not come without problems as well. There's an investment, yeah. Most of the organic farming is actually more harmful than the industrial ones, and given that we have the population growth at the moment and kind of feeling of stenochoria like biodiversity loss, and so we should not kind of extend or expand the area of agriculture from what we have, which would mean that we would need to get more yield out of the area what we already have for those roughly 2 billion more people, might be even 3.
One detail, our mythological hero Väinämöinen was adored about his superior knowledge.
Yeah, that's true. And he also was a poet and a kind of musician and what else he was. Yes.
One thing about this curiosity as a curse is that maybe we also have a stigma of being wrong, or a fear of being wrong, and that has also been in the news lately. That we should be more able to admit the mistakes. That of course we should strive to be right, but we should also not be afraid to be wrong. Yeah. We should be really learning from the mistakes and not remember that that's the guy who was one time before.
Yeah, exactly. So that we had this metaphor takin kääntäminen as a negative stuff. So, but the strong opinions but weakly held is the idea what I think is one of the core principle of ecomodernism as well. So that it's not a shame if you admit that I was wrong, especially if the evidence changed and so forth and so forth.
I think it's a cause for celebration.
Yeah.
When you find out that you're wrong, because then you become more knowledgeable.
Yeah, and I mean this is the reason why I think that the eco-modernist society is so valuable, so that discussions are really enlightening and there is a true sense of debate and willingness to learn, and there is no shame to be kind of uninformed, that you can openly acknowledge that, sorry guys, I don't know, can you help me? It's really valuable thing. Okay, thank you.